And to be quite honest, our immigration process is broken. We saw it firsthand with the auto pen failed Joe Biden administration, allowing millions of illegal aliens into this country, 24 million illegal aliens, abusing the asylum claim process, abusing certain visa programs. And they even made an app to do that, and just created what I call the conduit of chaos.
All right, Mr. Eric Flores, thank you for joining me in the den.
Thanks for having me.
It's a blessing to have you. I know I was running in from Houston, and you were running in from Corpus.
Corpus Christi.
You had an event there.
I did, yeah. We got invited to speak to the Venezuelan community, as you know, Dr. Gomez, and super happy to be there, answer their questions, and just tell them the great actions that President Trump has taken.
Awesome. Mr. Dr. Gomez and Mr. Prunell, was he there as well?
I believe so.
They were here. I recorded with Mr. Prunell concerning the apprehension and arrest of Maduro. So that was super interesting. I'm looking forward to having dinner with them sometime so they can get me caught up in what's going on out there. So what was going on over there? Like, what were you talking about with them?
Look, I was just telling them that President Trump, a lot of people have... we've all heard about Venezuela all over the media, right? And I think the main thing we need to focus on is we have seen a historic military action take place. We had Maduro, who was over there. As we know, he had 2 elections. He had lost both of them and continued to run the country. So they were, he was quite the oppressor over there. And finally, President Trump, it took this action to give the people of Venezuela their voice. So they were tremendously happy of that historic military action. We were in, we were out, no wounded or no deaths on behalf of the American side. Again, one of the most historic.
Was there any deaths on their side? I'm assuming. I'm assuming it was pretty devastating.
Peace through strength.
I didn't even ask that. So I'm trying to catch my breath. Like I told you, I was running in from Houston. I drove out there this morning. I've been on the road all day to go pick up some rusty tin sheets.
Okay.
For a little casita that I'm building in my ranch. And oh my goodness, it was a long road. It was like 3 hours and 20 minutes that way. And when I looked up the GPS, it was like 3 hours and a half, a little over 3 hours and a half to get back. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I'm gonna make it.
Hopefully you had a good podcast on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the guy I wasn't doing well, never mind. I was over there picking up that tin, and this guy had a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of rustic stuff, barn stuff. So he took me to another location that he had, and he had like shiplap and old wooden floors and beams. And I was like, man, let me have some of this. He had this like this stove, like those old antique stoves that kind of have a pipe going out the top of the cabins and stuff like that. And man, I was trying to get him to sell it to me, but he wouldn't do it. I mean, he'd sell it to me, but at a good price. And I was like, nah, I'm good, man. But I made it back in time for you guys. As I was telling you, we got here, and last night we set everything up for the podcast. We got here, everything had been taken down. So I'm kind of sweating and getting everything ready. But I'm glad that you're here. And you guys were out there with the Venezuelan community. Is that a big community in Corpus?
I mean, I'll tell you, I was shocked to see so many people there. I mean, there was probably anywhere from 50 to 75 people.
Oh, wow.
And super eager to meet me, which was totally awesome. I just told them, look, the most important thing tonight is that is to hear your all's concerns, to hear your all's questions, because it would be disingenuous if I showed up and told them I had this grandiose plan. They're the ones closest to their issues. Mm-hmm. They know it the best. And they had great questions, great concerns. Some of them even had legislation that is ongoing right now in D.C., having to deal with the Venezuelan community. So that was also...
What type of legislation are they looking for?
So, I think there's already there's a bill that's already in place that one of the congressional members has put forward. I think it's the Venezuelan Act or something to that effect, where it is essentially, the bill discusses, I guess, anybody before 2021 that had come from Venezuela, They're just asking for a little bit more clarity in that regard. So, was unaware of that bill up in DC. So just to kind of hear what their thoughts were with that piece of legislation, what they would want to see. And of course, everybody I spoke to there, they were praising President Trump. So I know the the mainstream media is, casting, and saying certain things. These folks absolutely praising President Trump.
Yeah, not the Venezuelan people. Maybe the regime is, and everybody caught up with them, but they're not. So what is their take on that bill? Like, what do they want to see happen?
Yeah, so I think for some of their people, they would just like to see some clarity within the immigration process.
As far as what?
So I think for them, it's more, a lot of their folks are already here in the country. They've been here for, over a decade. And they just, are looking and seeking for some answers as in regard to the immigration process. And to be quite honest, our immigration process is broken. We saw it firsthand with the auto pen failed Joe Biden administration, allowing millions of illegal aliens into this country, 24 million illegal aliens, abusing the asylum claim process, abusing certain visa programs. And they even made an app to do that. And, just created what I call the conduit of chaos.
Yeah. I mean, we know their intentions for that and all that. So it's no surprise, but I know like the Venezuelans are big fans of Trump. Most people from socialist countries Cubans are big fans of Donald Trump, and they tend to vote Republican because of that. They do not want to see socialism here. And unfortunately, Hispanics that have been here, usually of Mexican descent that are here, Hispanic, don't understand what it's like to live under socialism. I mean, they should have a taste of what it's like living under a corrupt government, but they still, for whatever reason, when they've been here several generations, Mexican-American people, they tend to vote, they've been told and taught to vote Democrat. But all these new Hispanics from Cuba, from Venezuela, and from all those socialist countries or those teetering on socialism, they don't want that here in the United States. So they're pro-Republican. But so I'm glad you had a chance to be out there with them. And we talked last night at the debate. How'd you like the debate? It was pretty interesting. I didn't get all of it, but I got some of it.
I will say the Nueces County Republican Party did a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. I mean, this looked as if I've attended some presidential debates, some other, senatorial debates. Just walking in there, you're almost enamored. Yeah. I mean, big flag, great stage, podium, so organized. So kudos to the Nueces County Republican Party. The chair as well did a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. Questions were great. A lot of important questions, right? Talking about the ports, immigration, national security, inflation. Mm-hmm. So just an awesome debate, great discussions.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a little bit. But we were talking last night, and I mentioned how somebody from your team had reached out to be on the podcast. Unfortunately, we hadn't been able to do it. And you were the last one. You were the only one on that stage that hadn't been on the podcast. So I said, hey, you want to do it? So thank you for agreeing, and now we have you here. So I
get to say in the den now.
Yeah, you get to say you were in the den, and I get to say that I have all the current running candidates. Had some that have already dropped. Well, one that already dropped out, but everybody else that was on that stage I've had in the den, and it was great people.
Yeah,
like there's a group of great people, so you can't really complain about the selection that we have up there. Do you get along with the rest of the guys up there and gal?
I think we're, great group of what I call American patriots. Of course, we all disagree to some sort of extent. But what I have always said, jumping into the race, especially in the Republican primary, we should be unified. We should be looking at the most important thing, and that's winning the general.
And I'm sure that'll happen. I think after somebody's selected, then everybody will start to gel and come together. It's kind of like when Trump was running and calling Line Ted and Little Marco and all that stuff. Now they're all on his team. Everybody supports him full-heartedly. So right now you guys are competing. Y'all are opponents at the moment. So you guys have to fight it out, don't y'all?
Yeah, a little bit. And, do I think, the God honest truth is, are we going to see complete unification? Mm-hmm. I think whoever the nominee is, I hope that they unify behind that nominee. Fact is, I don't think that happens.
Yeah. Not
you know,
right off the bat.
yeah, and that's unfortunate. Whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, the fact is we have to see the greater purpose, and that's for the country, that's for the constituents of Texas 34. I myself, I'll say it here today. Whoever the nominee is, I hope it's me, of course, but I'm going to be fully supportive of whoever that person is.
Well, there's some fighters up there for sure. Last night, listening in, you can tell some of the passion up there. And not just because you're not as loud as me, you're not passionate, but there was some, some passion up there on that stage. And you come from a military background. What is your military background exactly? Is it Army or?
Army. Yeah, sort of served over a decade in uniform as a Army infantry officer. Started off, at a very young age, and graduated from the University of Texas at Austin as a distinguished military graduate. Took my commission as an infantry officer. Off I went to go do what I call the cool guy schools. I was an 11 Alpha. I spent a lot of time at Fort Benning, Georgia. And actually what brought me back down to South Texas was Operation Guardian Support, President Trump's initiative to put more Border Patrol badges back to the border.
Really? So you signed up for infantry
Yes,
willingly,
willingly,
voluntarily.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that, because I know with my brother's a Marine, and when he went to the Marines, my parents were very clear: do not sign up for the infantry. Do not do that. Find something else that's a little bit safer. But you went out there and signed up for the infantry.
Yeah, I played a lot of baseball growing up. Just absolutely enjoyed the team dynamic. I think I got to a point where I realized I wasn't going to play Division I baseball, and always needed that. I needed to serve a purpose just greater than myself. I wanted to always be part of a team, and I think that's what really called me to the military. And just so happened, I'm a junior in high school. Military recruiter walks in for the Army and says, "Hey, we need more people and men and women to go join."
Did they trick you to get into the infantry?
No, I kind of, so my family, my father served, my grandfather on my mom's side, he was a Korean War vet.
Awesome.
And just always kind of grew up around it.
Yeah.
And realized, look, I want to be in the trench. And I talked to the recruiter, and he said, look, if you want to do that, you're very physically capable of doing that. You're very smart. Graduated, number 4 from high school. So top of my class. And he said, you can do anything you want. Your ASVAB score is high. What do you want to do? I said, I want to do the infantry. And he kind of looked at me kind of shocked.
Are you crazy?
And I said, yeah. I said, why, why that look? And he goes, Eric, you can go really anything, aviation, military, police, intelligence. And I said, no, I want to be on the front lines. And he says, all right, well, let's do it. Infantry, here you come.
I guess when people are young, they're a little dumber. They're a little careless, maybe, and they're willing to take. I guess we go through stages, right, in life, and we're supposed to be that carefree whenever we're that young, because there's stuff that needs to be accomplished, and you got to go out there and fight for it, right? Later on in life, I don't know that you wise up, but you move into a different stage of life where you don't have the strength or the energy to do all that.
Yeah, well, I think growing up in Christian faith, right, it talks about different seasons in our lives. And I think just in that season, I had a lot of energy and just that sense of purpose to really serve the nation. And, joined the infantry, had a great experience, got to jump out of helicopters and, rappel off of these, tall buildings. Really enjoyed it. People asked me, would you do it again? I said, 100%.
100%. How old are you, man?
34 years old.
Man, you're young. Okay. Okay. What's the youngest congressman out there right now?
Great question. I think there's somebody really young, like 29, Whoa. 30 years old.
Really?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. I would not be the youngest.
You would not be the youngest. That's good, because you're the youngest. You get pushed around and that noogies and wedgies, and that's awesome. So as a military, with military background, I heard that you were also a police officer. You have background in law enforcement.
I do. So not police officer. I got to serve as what they call federal prosecutor, assistant United States attorney is what they call line prosecutor. My focus was really financial crimes. Coming from private practice, I was representing governmental entities, cities, school districts, economic development corporations. So just had a real keen eye to compliance, finances, budgets. So went to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the McAllen Division, part what they call the Southern District of Texas, and did that for a couple years, and got to support the men and women in Border Patrol, FBI, HSI, and it was great time.
Good. Those Border Patrol agents have been through a lot, haven't they?
Absolutely. I'm super honored, Pastor, to have the endorsement of the National Border Patrol Council. And people are like, oh my God, why? And I said, look, at a time when they were being punched in the gut, demonized, I was standing with them in the trench, coming back to, wanting to be in the trench. I was with them in the trench, standing shoulder to shoulder with them. And any time that any criminal laid hands on them, for whatever reason, during an apprehension, during a confrontation, I had their backs, full stop.
Awesome. And was that when they were sharing pictures of guys on horses, seemingly whipping people and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Were you around then?
Just another false narrative.
Yeah.
Of the mainstream media. Total fake news. But yeah, I was serving during that time. I call it the auto pen failed Joe Biden administration, and despite him absolutely hamstringing myself as a federal prosecutor, other federal agents, we dismantled the largest human smuggling organization in this district. We prosecuted a Texas top 10 most wanted child predator, and they've been called to justice.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of that going on, though. There's much more. I know Trump called the cartels or terrorist organizations, and he kind of waged war against them. What are we seeing right now from Trump towards that or about that?
Well, look, President Trump has absolutely secured our border. I mean, we are at a 50-year all-time low when it comes to apprehension rates. Pastor, when I was serving, at the tip of the spear, the McAllen Division carries 36% of the cases for the entire Southern District of Texas, right? And that, this district stems all the way from Laredo as far north as Houston. So our headquarters is in Houston, a huge district, right? And the McAllens, I call
the 34th goes all the way to Houston?
No. So I'm talking the Southern District of Texas. So,
okay.
Our office is no.
I think that's
no, absolutely not. So our, the federal jurisdiction, right, for the Southern District of Texas,
my bad.
Is the headquarters is in Houston, and it stems all the way. So it isn't, we're a border region area, right? And under President Biden, it was absolutely terrible. I call it the conduit of chaos, right? 24 million illegal aliens were allowed into this country. So now let's take it to your question with President Trump. We have a secured border, right? 50-year all-time low. Before, you'd walk into the courtroom, you'd have 300 apprehended in one night. Now it's single digits.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because we're allowing the federal agents and the prosecutors to do their jobs.
Mm-hmm. So how does that work with ICE going out, into the neighborhoods and into the all over America, apprehending people? I know they're being attacked all over the place and criticized. We know that just recently here, a lady got shot and killed by an ICE agent. What do you say, or what should we say to the critics that say that the ICE agents are going after just regular, hardworking citizens? Is that happening? I mean,
yeah, first off, let's just debunk it from the top, right? I was on Facebook the other day and see, ICE agents don't even have arrest authority. It's absolutely false, right? A lot of the agents that are actually out there enforcing it's ICRO, or in some instances, BORTAC, some of those actually are 1811s, right? What they call 1811 agents. They're full-blown federal agent investigators, right? Each one of those agents who are out there, whether they're ICRO, whether they're BORTAC, have arrest authority. So let's just debunk that one. The second one is, anytime you lay a hand on an agent, a lot of people don't know this. That's actually a federal offense. Title 18, Section 111. We call it an AFO, or assault on a federal officer. So let's use that one instance where the mainstream media or the fake news shows a tiny glimpse, right? That's what they want the people to see. A little tiny glimpse of this section of this video, right? Where it looks that, she's just there, an innocent bystander. That's not the truth. She was heckling these agents who were there for a lawful purpose, and that is to enforce the law.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who is present illegally in this country, you have violated a law.
Mhm.
And what law is that? Title 8, 1325. That you did not have the permission of the Attorney General of the United States or the Secretary of Homeland Security to be president of the United States. And that's what they're doing. They're exercising their lawful authority. And so let's come back to the shooting incident. She's there interrupting lawful enforcement operations. They tell her to leave from the beginning. The MSM won't tell you that. She was heckling them since the morning for hours. Finally, they follow the rules of de-escalation. They tell her, hey, you should leave. Then they raise their voices and they say, hey, you know what? Get out of your vehicle. So then she proceeds to weaponize her vehicle and hits the agent. So at this point, he is well within his bounds to use deadly force. He did so. I've investigated, dozens of these cases. It was a good shoot.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the reaction from the dad?
I did not.
That was pretty interesting. I guess he's a Christian.
Okay.
And he was like, I don't blame anybody. And he says, if she had been walking with the Lord, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. And yeah, I'm completely condensing that, but it was a very interesting response that he had. And, you could feel for him because we all love our children, regardless of what they're doing in life.
Mhm.
But, he had that to express. And it's just like my heart went out to him because, God knows what he had gone through, which gives nobody the right to kill anybody, right? That we don't want anybody to die. I'm just saying that the way he approached it was very humbling, very humbling. So now concerning that they are arresting just hardworking people who have committed no crime other than them being here illegally. Is that actually happening?
Look, I think President Trump has said it from the beginning, right? And the mainstream media can spin it however they want. This administration is reacting to a failed auto pen Joe Biden administration that allowed 24 million illegal aliens into this country.
Mm-hmm.
We have to rectify that.
So what does that mean? Like, okay, so he was using the auto pen. Is that illegal? I mean, it sounds like a
look. If you have vested,
question, but
yeah, I think if you have vested authority as the president of the United States, you yourself should be signing executive orders.
Right.
You yourself should be signing, laws into existence, and that's not what was happening.
So then, why doesn't anything happen?
Yeah, I think the administration is doing a great job of rectifying a lot of that. If you see, he's already brought back a lot of those things that has been proven that the auto pen Joe Biden administration has already done. That is what this administration is focusing on, is rectifying and fixing a lot of those failures.
But from your average Joe, your average citizen, looking up to Washington and seeing all the kinds of mess that happens over there, and nobody sees a day in jail, and we get put in jail for any little thing, right? So how are we supposed to trust that system and have any faith in that kind of system? We know that they cheated on the elections. Nobody's doing anything about it. We know that they were deliberately bringing all these immigrants into the country to kind of fix, if you will, elections and get more seats. Why isn't anything being done about it?
Look, I think absolutely something is being done about it.
Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And
so, let's just start from a very kind of a simplistic approach here. Let's look at who President Trump is already rectifying. Let's look at, Director of the FBI, Kash Patel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a great move because in theory, the other director could have stayed there, given his term length, right? But right away, President Trump noticed what was going on with the FBI and said, you know what, we need somebody who is going to be accountable to the people. And he nominated Kash Patel. Let's now go to, other federal judges that he's now putting in place that are in the nomination process. They are accountable to the people. They are men and women who are going to enforce the Constitution. And the same thing with the U.S. attorneys. He is actively picking the best of the best U.S. attorneys. And that is where we're going to see the real results. We're only 1 year in. 365 days, 3 years ago.
Right? Is Kash still in?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know Dan Bongino kind of resigned, right?
I think he stepped away from his role.
Yeah.
Served a great purpose the time he was there.
So what do you think about that? I saw Kash and Dan Bongino on some kind of a podcast, probably some interview. and they were being asked about the Epstein files or the Epstein suicide. They completely changed their tune and start saying, "Oh, he killed himself. He killed himself. We saw the video. He killed." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? There was no video." All of a sudden, video pops up out of somewhere, and he actually killed himself. No, you can see it. It's grainy. I'm like, bro, like you think we don't know what AI can do?
Yeah.
Man, AI. I posted something just yesterday of a video where this guy is saying, "I'm putting this video up so that you can realize that you can no longer trust anything." And he's different
scary.
celebrities, changing.
Scary.
And they're talking, and Trump and Kamala and The Rock and all these kind of different stuff. And I mean, it looks like you're seeing it as it is, and it's not. It's fake.
Yeah.
So he says it's grainy. I'm like AI cannot make a grainy video. What are you talking about? So what do you think happened to Cash and Dan Bongino once they got in there? Who got to them?
No, look, I don't think anybody got to them. I think that
you think he really killed himself?
No. So
I mean, yeah.
Let's look at.
But do you?
Let's look at.
Do you think he killed himself?
Look, the evidence.
You're not allowed to answer that question.
So look, let's look at it from this standpoint. I want to come back to Director Patel, right? There's certain things that you can say while you're a civilian, but once you're vested with that authority that he has as the director, a lot of people want folks to speak extremely freely about some certain issues. But he's probably one of the most powerful, people in law enforcement. Things about investigations, have to be kept.
Yeah, but man, when I was listening to both of them, they just sounded fake. And I'm like, what in the world happened to them? Something happened that had to have happened. And I know you get into positions like that. And I know that pressure is real. Even whoever one of you guys wins the election, once you get up there, talking to Bobby Pulido, and he's like, "I'm a conservative Democrat. I
don't think those exist anymore."
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, even if you're a conservative Democrat, is still way left, right? And he said, "Well, I want to go up there and change things." I was like, "Bro, you think you're gonna be able to get up there and change things? They're going to pressure you into position and pressure you to do what they want you to do." So once anybody gets in there, the reality of the pressure sets in, and the arm twisting, and if you don't do this, this will happen. And maybe to them, they don't care, but family members, things like that, their livelihood. Do you think that played a role in any way? Because, I mean...
With the director?
With both of them.
No. So, I mean, let's look at Director Patel's, route to how he got there. He himself was a prosecutor. Outstanding,
So let me stop you there, because everything he was saying before he got in there, like, reflects that, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Once he got in there, it's like all that disappeared. It's like we had a clone of Patel that was not Patel. That's what it seemed like to me. I heard him speaking. I'm like, whoa, what in the world happened?
Excuse me.
And he could have said something like, well, this is what happened. And, given a little more, it's just, we saw the video. He absolutely killed himself. I'm like, bro, everybody and their brother knows he did not kill himself.
Yeah, I think he, he's operating with the confines of his job, right? He is the director of the FBI. So, I think some folks think that you can still speak freely in that position. But once he probably has the highest security clearance, next to the president of the United States. And he's got to keep those investigations intact. He's got to keep them pure, and, ensure justice at the end of the day.
Yeah, but still, I don't know. The way he would have brought it out would have probably, or should have probably.
And I'll say it now, he's going to go down in history as one of the greatest FBI directors, if not the greatest FBI director that we've ever had.
What do you think he's accomplished so far to be able to deserve that?
So look, I've seen it firsthand.
I'm a fan, but pre installation.
Look, I've seen it firsthand. Let's look at what he's already done. he's already moved some of these agents who have been with the FBI, who I say that they were complacent and they were risk adverse leaders within the FBI. That is a major accomplishment. Everybody knows, if you've served in federal law enforcement, when you come up to DC, he's closed down that office.
Mm-hmm.
He is
I heard that.
He is moving people back to the front lines to where we need them. So he's been just that accomplishment alone has been amazing. So let's look at the headlines. Over 200% more arrests just in 1 year that he served as the director of the FBI. 200% increase.
Okay.
Amazing.
That's good. And that's probably why I even...
just 2 days ago, he arrested some of the main leaders of some of the drug cartels. He just captured one of the FBI's most wanted top 10, who was a former Canadian Olympian. He was they were calling him the modern day El Chapo.
Really?
That happened under FBI Director Kash Patel's watch.
Yeah.
Truly deserves an applause.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he's watching now, Director Patel, you were doing a great job.
Show Cash.
Absolutely.
So okay, I'll give you that, and I think we're happy to see those types of arrests taking place. I know that even with the arrests of these illegal immigrants with ICE, the crime rate has gone down significantly. Do you
100%.
know the percentage of that it's come down?
I don't know the exact percentage, but I can tell you that it's gone significantly down.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons that you have to justify them arresting anybody and everybody, even if they're not a serious crime offender or whatever, is because if Mexico, or if people here, anybody hears, you can still go as long as you're chill, they're still going to try to come over here. But if they hear reports, they're arresting everybody out there, then it becomes a deterrent from people to come over here. I'm not for, families being broken up and stuff like that. I think they should focus on serious criminals and stuff like that.
Look, I think the main deterrent is, again, I have prosecuted probably well over 1,000 immigration cases, right? What they call your Title VIII cases. The deterrence is they know now that they are going to be not only deported, they're going to be walking away out of here with a conviction. So the deterrence is there. Unfortunately, we have the fake news, mainstream media spreading this absolutely false narrative that everybody under the sun is being arrested. Look, these people have been identified that they're here illegally, right, without permission of the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Yeah, awesome. Are you do you have any kind of connections or anything like that to the Clintons?
No.
So I was getting to that when we were talking about Patel and how things can happen once you get into places like that, as far as pressure goes. And I know that there's like a body count that's way up there of associates or friends or anything. We might want to edit this, but people associated with the Clintons that just died like mysteriously.
Yeah, I've kind of seen some of those.
They'll probably be careful because they'll probably take you before me. What do you think about that?
Look, if we have nefarious actors out there, as you're, talking about, we shouldn't, right?
Do you think that exists? Do you think it happens?
Which portion that people get
mysteriously die, accidentally die?
Look, I think I know what you're talking about. I've seen some of the videos and conspiracies that are out there. It's just too coincidental for me.
Yeah. So are you a conspiracy theorist?
Look, there used to be a running joke at my old office that I used to have a conspiracy hat on my desk, and they're like, "Take your conspiracy hat, hat off, Eric." And I was like, "Okay, here it goes."
Yeah, it's hard.
So I do dabble once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard when they're all coming true. Like you.
Yeah.
The reason I'm not a conspiracy theorist is because all the conspiracies are true.
Yeah.
I was talking to the gentleman, Mr. Brunel from Venezuela, and he says, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like over here in the United States, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists. And I said, what about Venezuela? Was there a lot of conspiracy theorists over there? He said, yes, there was. And did it come to pass what they were afraid of? Absolutely. So you kind of have to be a conspiracy theorist so that you can be paying attention and not allow those things to come into fruition. Did they want to turn us into socialists, a socialist country? Do you think that the Biden, the Obama administration wanted to turn us into a socialist country?
I mean, if you just look at some of the incentive programs that they had, right? Obamacare, for example, I there was no way to fund that program, right? But why? Just think about it. It's all about the incentives that they were offering. So 100%, I think they wanted to turn us into a socialist country, to be dependent on something and not do anything else. I mean, and that's what's going on in a lot of, these South Texas regions.
Mm-hmm.
They want people to be, really, really dependent upon these incentives. Why?
Exactly.
Because they would then control.
Exactly. So even in a country like Venezuela, the people become dependent. So they could go as far as saying, no, we want you to keep Maduro in place, right? And I talked to Mr. Prunella about this. I said, because you become dependent on it. In other words, if you rip them out, even the little that you are getting, you are not going to have to struggle to get for a little while, an opportunity starts to come back. But people enjoy or embrace what they know, even if it's bad. They find some kind of comfort in it. And the Hispanic culture here in the United States have been Democrat for generations, because as my parents and their generations would say, the Democrat is for the poor. As I was growing up, I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to be poor. So I should get somebody that's not for the poor, that's going to help me and incentivize me to not be poor. Because if they are for the poor, guess what they're going to want to keep you? Poor.
That's right.
So that you can continue to be dependent on them. So, but anyway, what were we talking about? Yeah, so the socialism, do you think that their incentive was, or their goal was?
I think you hit it right. Man, I could not have said it better. Why would they want that? They want to be able to keep these incentives, dangle that carrot,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep control, right? They don't want you to look left and right. They just want you to see, hey, we have this incentive right here. And whatever that incentive may be, whether it's food, whether it's money, whether it's subsidies, whatever the case may be, that's what they wanted.
Right.
Right. And you're exactly right. Well, wait a minute. I don't want to be poor. I want to live the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to build my family. I want to be able to become an entrepreneur, a successful one at that.
But that gets stripped. That gets stripped under a Democrat mindset, because when you start getting help and benefits and welfare, and you start getting paid more for staying at home doing nothing, then the opportunities that are arising for you, then you're like, why would I go bust my butt to get what I'm getting for doing nothing? And that's always been an obstacle for growth in our community, because, when jobs opportunities come in and people have to go train for them, I remember years ago, somebody, I think it was on the city council, told me, Pastor, but we do put job training. Nobody comes. I said, ma'am, why would they come if they're getting more?
They're getting paid more to stay home.
So, and then they lose their dignity.
And what's next after that? Pride.
Right. They lose it all. So they got no ambition. They don't care. Morals start slipping away as well. Anything to keep the suppliers in power. And that's just a sad course of events right there.
I mean, I think we're seeing it. I think you hit it, right, nail on the head is they're stripping away the pride,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pride to go to work, pride to be an American. And that's why you see a lot of people who are, younger in their generation, right? They're in their 20s, in their mid 20s. And they think in their mind, they'll never be able to afford a home,
Mm-hmm.
right? And why is that? Because, the Democrats, that's what they want. They want folks to lose pride in this country. And, I got bad news for them. Under this administration and for many years to come, whether it's, President Vance or President Rubio after President Trump leaves office, that's not going to happen.
Right.
We're bringing back, pride in our country, pride to go to work and to pursue the American dream.
Incentive, motivation. So anybody who has motivation, they tend to do better in life. But when you suck that out of people, they just start, rotting. That's unfortunate. Just trying to survive. I had the opportunity to ask General Flynn that question because we were talking about Obama, and I said, "What was their goal?" No, we weren't talking about Obama. We were talking about Biden. Early in his administration, when everything started going down, I said, "It's obvious they're trying to destroy this
Since
country."
day one.
Yeah. I said, "It's obvious they're trying to destroy this country. Why are they trying to destroy it?"
Yeah.
I asked him, and he said, "Well, they're trying to bring in communism." So why? He said, "Power." Okay, I said, "All right, who is behind this all?" And I was expecting him to say, a bigger name, a more shady, in the dark kind of name. And he said Obama. I said, Obama? I thought he was more just like a puppet. I thought maybe the Klaus and all those guys were more behind the scenes. But no, he said Obama's behind it. Are you sure he's not just a puppet? I said, no, he's the guy.
He's popped up in some integral, periods of time, right? Which is, it's, as you say, it's not a conspiracy theory when it becomes true, right? I think if you look at how active he got, in this most recent election with President Trump, he's doing it for a reason, right? And he's in the background, but if you pay real close attention, he is pulling some strings, that are going against what I would say the core principles of this country, which are faith, family, freedom.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, and he doesn't pop up all the time, but in those integral times when he can shift something to go to the far left.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think they're losing that hold though on people.
Oh, I think it's gone.
When he came out and told black men that they needed to vote for Kamala, I was like, oh no, that you can almost sense it. You don't even have to go ask black men, like, what'd you think of that? You can almost, it was just like very cringy. And I said, nah, this guy's losing it. He's losing his grip on that community.
He was grasping at straws.
Yeah.
Right. And I think President Trump has done more for, minorities than any other president has.
Yeah. And I think the black community saw Obama as weak in that moment. And they said, nah, we're not doing this anymore. And they jumped over and they started to support Trump, as a lot of Hispanics as well.
Absolutely.
I think, most Mexican-American, most Hispanics are conservative by nature, by culture. They just don't know it. They don't know that they're supposed to be voting more Republican. They're not pro-abortion. Even with Bobby Pulido, I asked him, and he said he was pro-life. And I said, but I can't tell anybody else what they should be. But I was like, and I should have asked him. I didn't get to ask him, but I should have asked. I thought about it later. I was like, why didn't that come up? Why are you pro-life? Why would you not allow your son, the way he gave the example, why would you not allow your son, if he got a girl pregnant, to take her to get an abortion? Why? So I'm assuming it would be because I think that'd be murdering a baby. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if you believe it's murdering a baby, why would you think it's okay for your neighbor to go murder a baby?
They have a complete and total, just, I think, a loss of humanity on the left.
Yeah.
Right. And
well, I think they're trying to hold on to the Democratic Party. So they're trying to negotiate those policies or those topics. And you really can't, can you?
You can't. It's that is yes or no, pro-life, pro-choice, right? I'm pro-life, been a long-time Christian, right? I say I have, I've devoted my life to Christ. Me and my wife actually lead a marriage ministry at our church. And it's very, very clear and simple.
So I heard you say that last night. And I was like, I'm going to ask you about that. You said you were a lifelong Christian. Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Look, I grew up from a very young age understanding Christ. I thank my parents for that. And my grandma, who's no longer with us, Grandma Irene, from the moment that I can remember, I remember my grandma playing the piano at her church.
Okay.
Right. And it was just something so beautiful to be in church with my parents, and if not with my parents, with my grandma. So I say I'm a lifelong Christian because I grew up, really in that environment.
So you had a Christian background all your life,
Yes.
right? Atmosphere. But when, because to
That's a good question. I feel it coming.
yeah,
Let me hear
because
it.
to be a Christian, you have
Yeah,
to
let
make
me hear
a
it.
decision to
Yes.
receive Christ as your Lord and Savior. When did you do that?
I think if I remember it very vividly, I was a freshman in high school. Maybe I was an eighth grader, a little younger than that. But again, grew up playing baseball, and one of my good friends, he invited me to church, to his church. I was already attending a church with my parents, and he says, "Hey, Eric, I'd love for you to come with me to my church." And I thought about it, and I said, "Well, how are my parents going to take this?" And told my mom, I was like, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to go to church with one of my buddies." She goes, "Where at?" And I said, "Oh, down the street." She goes, "Okay." And I said, "Oh, you're not going to be upset with me?" She goes, "Mijito, as long as you're going to follow and to listen to Jesus Christ, you go. And if that's your church, that's where you should go and worship." Yeah, sure enough, fell in love with the church, and been there ever since.
Did they present the gospel that night?
They did. I mean, when I walked in, it was. I think we're in the book of Matthew, and they gave a great sermon, and fell in love with just the energy and the vibes in the church. It was about positivity. It was about following Christ, accepting His grace. And I said, "Man, this is where I need to be." There was nothing wrong with my parents' church if they're watching.
Right. No. Yeah, but sometimes, some people sow the seed, some water it, and then some bring the harvest. So I want to make sure and clarify, right? Because you're sitting in front of me. You believe you will be going to heaven if you were to die?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've accepted the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and been baptized. So yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So my next question was going to be, why do you believe you're going to heaven? So it's not by works, lest any man should boast. It's by our surrender to Him, our receiving of our Lord and Savior, because we fall short.
That's right.
There's absolutely nothing we can do to receive that salvation other than accept the sacrifice and what He did for the atonement of our sins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people, oftentimes they don't see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They think it is by works.
Right.
And I'll be honest, there for a period of time, when I was a younger adult, I also thought it was by works,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when I really got into the Word, right, when I really started to study the Bible, to go to church and treat it like, people say, "Hey, Eric, how do you attack the Bible?" And I said, "Well, how do you attack the gym?"
Yeah.
Right? If you want to grow the biceps, you only hit it once a week, or you hit it 3 times a week. You're doing supersets, right? And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's true." So that's how I attacked my spiritual side of life.
Good.
Right? Is getting into the Word, getting into a men's group, doing marriage, ministry.
You have to be intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be
I
intentional.
was
And
watching a pastor on social media, and he said, the studies show that if you read the Bible once a week, nothing happens. If you read it twice a week, there's not much change. But if you get into that level where you're reading your Bible, 4 times or more on a regular basis, your life will be completely transformed. And I was telling the church on Wednesday, that's the problem with us. We have the gospel, but we're not reading it. We want transformation. We want to see the blessings of God. But even he says, I believe it's in Joshua, make sure that you keep this word in your heart. Don't let it depart from your mouth, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. He says, meditate on this thing. Keep it in your mouth. Yet so many Christians don't read their Bible. And they're, the pastor said this would happen, that would happen. But it's only going to happen when you put the word in you.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it yourself. You got to plant the seed, you got to water it, and you got to harvest it. And then sometimes, as Jesus taught us, you also got to prune.
That's right. Yeah.
Some of the disciples were shocked to see him when he, pruned the fig tree. He was like, "Well, wait a minute, wait." And, he said, "Well, wait a minute, it's not going to bear any fruit, so you got to prune it." And you're right.
He cursed that one. He cursed that one because it wasn't producing what it said it was producing because of the leaves. The leaves represent praise. And he was praising with no fruit on it. And his representation of Christians that praise and have all the cliches, praise the Lord, God is good all the time, God is good. But they produce no fruit. God cursed it. He doesn't want us just to be worshiping from our mouths. He wants our hearts, and he wants us to produce fruit. Pruning, on the other hand, is when you are producing fruit, God cuts, he prunes back so that you can produce even more.
Love that.
Yeah, and that's hard.
That's good.
Because you're producing fruit, and God, why do I have to go through this? I'm doing so much for you. Yeah, I want you to do more.
Yeah, some of the best lessons come in the tougher times.
Yeah,
and I think he teaches us that. And some, talking about, when Christian folk or some of your parishioners are like, why do I have to go through this? Or the Bible tells us that the answers that we're seeking, it's right here in front of us. Yeah. I mean, it's right here. Each one of us have a phone.
Yeah.
I have the the Bible app downloaded. All we got to do is read it.
That's right. There's no reason why we shouldn't. Now, moving on. Now that I'm confident that Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that's most important. I always try to make sure that my guests, if they're not, that at least they hear the gospel. But you are the candidate for the 34th. We got short time, and I want to touch on this because there's 5 candidates left. As I said, I've had them all on except you. All of them are Christians, which is amazing. I think in the founding of our country, you had to be a Protestant Christian in order to run for office, is what I've learned, which is pretty awesome. That on the Republican Party, everybody's a Christian right now in this race.
Our country was founded on Christian principles.
That's right. That's right. And you have received the Trump endorsement. How big is that?
Pastor, I'll be honest, it still has taken me some time to really, digest that because it's so tremendous, so awesome. President Trump, has done a great job. We just hit his 1 year anniversary about 3 days ago. He's done an amazing job. So extremely humbled, privileged to have.
Let me ask you, how did that happen? I hear that he doesn't usually do that in primaries. He waits until the primaries are done to kind of start backing the candidate. How did that come about? Like, why did he do that?
I love the question. So, and I love this one particularly the most, right? We have some of my opponents, right, that spread an absolute false narratives, right? It just really shows me the lack of knowledge of how government works.
What are they spreading?
Yeah. So, the let's talk about one of my opponent's favorite one, the Biden DOJ, right? Absolutely false. That I weaponized, the Department of Justice against President Trump. Well, let me tell you, if that was the case, I would not have received his endorsement, right? Because it's a vetting process. Mm-hmm. Everybody who the president picks is absolutely and completely vetted. So let's take that one.
I would assume.
Yeah, no, it's not an assumption. It's a fact. Yeah. I lived it. So, how did I, even get to this point? Why did President Trump, endorse me? Well, first off, my campaign, it's not ran off of campaign slogans or sound bites. It's over a decade of service to this country. What does that look like? In uniform, as a municipal judge, city attorney, federal prosecutor, back to representing, governmental entities to ensure, law and order. So I was America First before it was even a slogan.
So how was your opponent saying that the DOJ was being used by you? Like, did you work for the DOJ?
Yeah. So I was, what they call an assistant United States attorney, not a political appointee. And I think that's what my opponent tries to inference or deduce from that. I was what they call a career prosecutor, right? While others were being career candidates, I was a career prosecutor locking up the worst of the worst, serving with millions of other Americans who are not political appointees. They're doing our job, like Border Patrol, FBI, HSI. We're there upholding the oath that we took to defend, protect and defend the Constitution.
So you mentioned the DOJ weaponized against Trump. So that was happening. The DOJ was being weaponized against Trump. You were not anywhere near that.
I was the furthest away from that.
So what part of the DOJ was doing that?
Yeah, so those
could you agree that was happening?
Yeah, so those were, yes, absolutely. And those people that were weaponizing their capacities, those were political appointees of the failed Otto Penn Joe Biden, right?
Okay.
Those folks sit up in DC, what they call main justice. I was so far away from that. Even if I wanted to email or call them, it'd be almost impossible.
Yeah, that's one of the things, when people start criticizing Trump, is like, oh, he's a felon. Well, when you bring up fake charges and all that, and you're in charge of who's prosecuting and indicting him and doing all that, sure, you can make him a felon so
Yes.
that he can't run against you, right? So it's silly. I can't stand when people call him a felon. I'm sure he embraces it a little bit. I think he had his mug shot in the White House, in the Oval Office or something.
Yeah. I want to go back to, again, to how did the endorsement come about, right? And how did they know you? So a lot of people don't know this. I was actually one of the finalists to serve as President Trump's United States Attorney for the Southern District of Texas, one of the busiest districts in the United States, and through that process, they saw my record, they saw my service to the country and said, you know what, Eric, would you do this 100% full stop? This Texas 34 deserves somebody of real leadership, someone with a real service record. That's how I got on his radar.
So did you meet with him?
Look, I actually got to meet President Trump when Governor Abbott endorsed him. I was a federal prosecutor at the time. A lot of people don't know this, is that when you have dignitaries, President Trump being one of them, come down to the Valley. I was assigned to a Secret Service detail and got to meet him there and had a good conversation with him long before, I had applied to be the U.S. Attorney, long before I ran for Congress, and super, awesome just to be in his presence, to speak to him for, I got, 3-4 minutes with him.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Great conversation.
I got to sit behind him when he was here in Robstown.
That's right.
He did his rally here. So I was in the back. You could see me out there with my Texas shirt and hat. So
did he hear you from the back?
Nah, I don't. Yeah. So let me ask you this, because at the debate, there was a lot of things said, and they say it without saying it. So I know they talked, well, they were kind of clear with what's her name? Monica de la Cruz, calling her a rhino, but it seemed like they were addressing some of you guys on stage as well. Yeah. I'm assuming that they were directing it to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they were. Myra at this point has probably thrown every sort of attack that she can, and
yeah, she's a fighter. She's a pit bull, and I think she's gonna
at
go
the end
after.
At the end of the day, the rhino name doesn't stand. President Trump endorsed me, and
so why are they saying that a rhino? Did you vote Democrat, or what? Where is that coming from? Or is it just because of the DOJ, or what's?
Yeah, I mean, I have, no idea where the attacks come from. As I've said this, countless times, I grew up as a Democrat, right? And
okay, because that's Keith mentioned that. Like, I've been voting Republican forever, right? Yeah. And some people just started, which we welcome them. But what was the term he used? We shouldn't give him a golden ticket right off the bat. So you grew up as a Democrat. When did you become a Republican?
Look, I got to the point where when I was an adult, really when I put on the uniform, as I grew older, I started to quickly realize this party no longer represents the values that I hold near and dear to my heart. I have 2 kids, 6-year-old Elena Grace and a 2-year-old baby James. I don't want men in my little girl's bathroom. Right. I certainly don't want boys playing, any sort of sports with my little girl. So it got to the point where I said, you know what? It's time for me I cannot reconcile my faith with those values.
That's right.
I could not reconcile the fact that they wanted open borders, that they did not stand behind law and order in our communities. So, yes, I walked away from the party. Absolutely. I say they abandoned me.
Yeah. A lot of people do say that.
The
Democratic Party.
So if we look at, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
RFK. President Trump at one point, right? So, there are people need to see that and say, if there's people willing to come to this party, we should open them, welcome them with open arms.
Right.
Because the only way we win elections is by doing what? Growing the party, having more numbers, educating more folks, right? But we got some people on the stage who want to use that name calling. It's just decisive. Right. It's decisive. I mean, let me ask you a question now. How do you welcome people to your church, right? With if they're not of Christian faith.
Yeah, with open arms.
Right? Do you call them names? No, right?
What did Christians by name only? What that's
what Christians by name only? If you were a Christian 6 months ago, you can't come.
Right.
What did Jesus do when he was preaching the gospel in the towns? Right.
So by when do you suppose that more people start dropping out the race? Because Mandel, I had Scott Mandel on here, and a few days later,
shout out to Mr. Mandel and Mr. Hinojosa, both dropped out. To really coalesce.
Fred, right?
Yes, sir. Both to coalesce and to unite around President Trump's decision, right? Everybody's MAGA, 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 MAGA. America first, America first, America first. But yet when he speaks, it's like, well, wait a minute. Myra herself said it. He's making mistakes. Well, wait a minute. Are you going to support President Trump or you're not? What is it? Yeah. Right? So, shout out to Mr. Mandel. Shout out to Mr. Hinojosa for uniting around the president, supporting his decision, and really showing true leadership.
Yeah, he was on here, and I think it was like the following week after the podcast aired. I heard that he had dropped out. So it's going to be the elephant in the room. So I'm assuming you're going to have to address it at some point. The video with the at the airport, you guys coming out the airport.
So we've already addressed it.
I haven't heard.
So actually, we were on the Larry Elizondo show. What was it this week? Monday.
I did hear that.
Yeah, way before that.
I didn't hear the show though, but
yeah, way before that video dropped. Again, just another desperate act, by my opponent to be like, oh my God, it's a gotcha moment.
Were y'all together?
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about me and Mr. Mandel?
Yes.
On the show?
No, on the plane.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So it wasn't AI.
No, not AI. Wasn't a grainy video.
It's hard to believe anything on video anymore. But so tell us about that. What were you guys up to? What was happening?
Look, I was headed up to the Republican conference, which was Tuesday. And Monday, actually in the weekend, we had talked, myself, me and Mr. Mandel, and he said, hey, look, Eric, I'm going to be dropping out of the race. And, I want to support President Trump. As leaders, we're all talking about being leaders and supporting President Trump. I want to support you. And I said, well, Mr. Mandel, I think that is awesome. And shortly thereafter, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to be headed up to D.C. I think you should come with me. We both went and went to the White House and spoke to President Trump's political team. And they thanked Mr. Mandel for being a great American patriot.
Okay. Who's involved in that political team?
Look, President Trump has several folks, involved in his political team, a long list of them. And, Mr. Mandel got to sit and speak with some of them.
Who was in that particular one?
In that room? Look, I think it's not best to name, just for security reasons. No need to do that. But look, he got to sit with them and to speak with them and say, hey, I'm going to support the president.
So are you able to give me like a nutshell or like in a nutshell, what happens? What is discussed in a meeting like that? Because obviously we're not privy to those types of conversations. It's pretty amazing that you have a chance to do that. But what does that sound like? What is it? Was it like, is it intimidating? Like what are they talking about?
Look, I definitely not intimidating, right? I think when you elect to actually do what you were preaching, right? You're talking about supporting the president of the United States, right? Every single forum, that's what you heard. So then the president endorses, so then you do the opposite. Are you practicing what you preach at that point? Mr. Mandel did that. He said he was going to support President Trump. So, when he got there, they thanked him. Mr. Mandel, thank you for being a great American patriot and supporting the president of the United States, full stop. So definitely not an intimidating, environment.
Now, let me ask you this. I don't know if this would, excuse me, help, but the remaining candidates, I know Trump does have a relationship with Maida, or at least he's been around her. She's campaigned for him and stuff like that. Why wouldn't he bring everybody together and say, hey, guys, I know you guys want this to happen. This is who I'm going to choose. Can you guys get behind him? Why wouldn't he do that instead of continuing on this race?
Well, I think one of them is efficiency, right? I don't think the president, the most powerful person in the world, has that much time to do that.
It would have been faster, I think, if you get everybody in the room and said hello. I mean, I can assume.
I think you analyze things just as he's probably one of the greatest business leaders in the United States.
Yeah.
Would you do something for a third time and expect a different result? It's failed twice.
I mean, they redrew the district for a reason.
Well, let's go back to the old one. I love that question. Let's go back to the old one. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did President Trump win or lose all 4 surrounding counties? Right? He won all of them. We had somebody who underperformed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You do not do something for a third time and expect a different result.
So that is a good question and something to look at, because I'm concerned that how they redrew this is not necessarily going to benefit us. The reason I say that, I don't know what they were looking at. If they were looking at just who voted for Trump, there was a lot of people who voted for Trump and then down ballot didn't vote Republican. Obviously, right? So do you think they took that into consideration when they redrew? I think Todd Hunter was kind of responsible or played a big part in that.
Well, look, kudos to high praise to Chairman Hunter, Senator Hinojosa, Representative Villalobos, a lot of those conservative Republican, leaders that we have at the State House for championing redistricting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why was, redistricting done? It's simple, right? Because there was a lot of voices that were not being heard.
Mm.
And it needed to be done.
Yeah.
And, I was one of the only candidates actually, excuse me, coffee's too good, to champion and got asked to assist with that brief that went up to the Supreme Court. And it stood the testament of not only time, but of the strictest scrutiny at the Supreme Court.
So you think if it had not been redrawn, you would have taken it?
Look, so man, that's Pastor, such a good point. Now we're getting to the meat and potatoes. I love it. I jumped in before redistricting, right? Happened.
Right.
I don't know if that was news to you or not the first time you heard it.
No. Like I really wasn't planning on having anybody. It wasn't even on my radar. But when Maida came on, then people started kind of reaching out to be on. And I discussed it with even my editor and producer. And I said, what do you think? I discussed it with other people. What do you think? I don't want it to be a political show. You know what I mean? But they said, well, why? It would be good if people are going to go look at the candidates on your podcast. I said, all right, we'll do 2 or 3 at the most. And then everybody started to come, and some started falling out. So now we have everybody on the
one of the first you hear it here for the first time. One of the first persons to recruit me to Texas 34, Eric Flores.
Really?
She was in District 28. Recruited me, said, you have my full endorsement. You are for Texas 34. You are what Texas 34 deserves. And then redistricting happened. And she called me and said, hey, I'm going to be coming back. Leadership asked me to run. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I have all the leadership's endorsement. Came back to 34, but coming back to your point, Pastor, is I signed up to beat Vicente Gonzalez when Myra underperformed the president because I knew I could have beat him in those old lines. And now we're going to beat him in the new lines.
Okay.
We're going to make sure whoever it is, I'm confident it'll be me, but whoever it is, we're going to beat Vicente in the general this time. It has to happen.
What do you think happened that she didn't win it that you'd say I would have won it? Like what would be
in the old lines?
Yeah.
Look, I think in the old lines, really and truly at the end, it came down to messaging, right? It came down to really being able to connect with the people, right? And throughout Texas 34, I represent a lot of these governmental entities. They can see me, they can touch me, and they trust me, right? So I think at the end of the day, if you look at some of the debates that were held between Vicente and Mayra, I think just, there was some messaging differences there that just didn't get to the people that I'm confident that we can this time and beat him.
I'm gonna try to. He talked to somebody I know that he said he would be interested in being on the podcast. I'm gonna try to see if I can get him on. If you win the nominee, to be the nominee or nomination, whatever, would you be willing to come on as on a like little debate between you guys?
Absolutely.
All right.
I've known Vicente for years, right? He's a practicing attorney, or was, in kind of Congress a little bit more difficult to do it. I've kind of seen him in and around the courtroom, and vice versa. I think he's seen me in and around the courtroom. So yeah, I'd love to have a debate. I think here is the issue when it comes, and I think Charlie Kirk did it the best. What an intelligent man.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a law degree, but probably one of the greatest orators around in our time, right? So I think it would be a very fruitful, very enlightening debate between me and Vicente, because we both know the issues, right? Mayra said it the other day, we don't need more attorneys in Congress. Well, that's her opinion, but, let me tell you, I have a doctorate in law. I read it. I write it every day. And the most important aspect of going up to Congress is professional advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
You can read and write. You can be the best. But if you can't advocate for it, Pastor, you probably see it. How do you get the word across to, some of these folks? You got to touch them in the soul.
Yeah.
You got to be able to spread that message. I think Jesus did a fantastic job, one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Congress is about.
Okay. That's good. So back to the redistricting before we close. Monica de la Cruz is more than likely going to be facing Bobby Pulido. The way they
I want to come back to, I think, coming back to absolutely inappropriate, unprofessional to call a congresswoman who has passed more legislation, tenfold what Vicente has done. Vicente's been there 10 years. I don't think he's passed one bill. I think other than renaming a post office, not passed one piece of legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Congresswoman de la Cruz, she's well beyond 7 pieces of legislation. Actually just got one signed in, I think here the other, the day before. Mexico with the water treaty. Amazing job there. She has done a great job.
So in your opinion, she's doing a good job?
She's doing a great job for South Texas. She's representing us well.
Because I'm in a way part of that district too, because I pastor a church in Jim Wells as well. We have another campus. So I often get together with people that are in the political world over there as well. And they're kind of upset with Mayra. They're Republicans, but they say, we haven't seen her face in I don't know how long. I don't think we've ever seen her face. So do you think that she's overconfident in that district?
So look, Congresswoman de la Cruz is doing what she should be doing. She should be up in D.C. advocating for South Texas, right? I don't know if in the old district she had Jim Wells or not, right? But where do you want?
She did.
Okay, where do you want your representative to be? You want him to be in D.C., being that squeaky wheel, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, she's done a great job. Do I think, excuse me, do I think that maybe she is underestimating Bobby? No, I don't think so, because she's going to win. I'm calling it right now. You heard it here first. 8 points, at least 8-point victory.
Okay.
Right. And why is that? Because she's not running on ideas, right? And this is what I say even about her own campaign. She's not running on ideas. She has already delivered experiences. Let's go and ask those farmers, right? I know some of them, back in South Texas, they were hurting for water, right? And they got a check. They got their water. These farmers are getting the critical aid that they need, and she delivered. So to call somebody, again, name calling, let's come back to what we talked about, Christian values.
Yeah. I don't know Monica too well, but I would encourage her. And if you know her, I would encourage her to do some stuff out there. Yep. Get out there, listen to the people a little bit more. I think that's all they need. They just didn't need her to show up. You know, she's probably the only candidate that I've reached out to see if they wanted to be on the podcast. I reached out to her, maybe her campaign manager or whatever she is. And I got kind of a like, you know, you got to go through here, whatever. And I'm like, no, that's okay. Like, I just want to see if she was interested. And I thought maybe she would want to be on, but I would encourage you to do more of that because they want to hear her. And if they don't hear her, I feel like she's going to lose people that she might think she has in her pocket. Which is unfortunate.
I think it's you know, good point. You gotta, you know, you at the end of the day, you gotta, you know, go speak to your constituents, hear their concerns. You know, I've said this, you know, throughout the campaign. The ones that know the problem the best are the ones that are nearest to it.
Yeah. So if you have a chance, if you have, you know, you get in her ear, tell her get out there and talk to some people.
You know, Pastor, you know, coming back to, you know, we're on the topic of Congresswoman de la Cruz and, you know, people just unprofessionally calling her names. Coming back to some of the mantras that people run on: God, family, country. Let's take the first one, God. You know, should we be calling people rhinos?
Well, you know,
is that God? You know, in the image of God,
right?
Should we be name calling people?
When it comes to politics, we shouldn't badmouth anybody. But if it's pertaining to the politics of it, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Question was asked.
Defend anything,
no. The question was asked yesterday, right? About faith. How is faith going to drive you?
Yeah.
Right. And you know that I said it in my decision. It is my moral compass.
Yeah.
It is my guide.
And that's why I asked the question that I asked because, you know, I know. Well, I don't want.
You know, look, I think if you're gonna,
I won't mention that. I'll talk to you about it afterwards because I'm trying to get somebody on the podcast. I'll talk to you about it afterwards. But yeah, you know, that's why when I heard a lot of the statements of faith, you know, I heard yours and I kind of knew what you meant, but I said, I want to get that clarity. And
thanks for that.
Means, you know, my whole life, you know, there comes a time where you have to make that decision and say, I want Lord, be my Lord, my Savior. But I understand growing up, my daughters grew up in church as well. And they've always loved Jesus, right? But they had to come to a point where they understood and said, you are my Lord and my Savior. So
yeah, I think you got to accept. And I think, you know, just as you were saying, you know, Christ Almighty, but you got to practice it. And what does that mean? It just doesn't mean on Sundays, Pastor. You know this. Every single day, what does the Bible tell us? What does Jesus tell us? We got to be the salt and the light of the earth. Whether that means, you know, I'm cleaning up, mopping up, cleaning the toilets to, you know, maybe someday in Congress, hopefully it's soon, you know, but every day that I served in the military uniform, I was spreading the salt and the light in the earth, right? When I was a prosecutor, right? When I was a municipal judge, father, husband, that's what we have to do.
Well, praise God.
You know, name calling isn't one of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me ask you this. If you do win the nomination for the Republican candidate, will Trump come down here and help you campaign?
Yeah, full stop.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to put this on you now.
Drum roll.
Yeah. Bring him here. It'd be amazing for him to come on here and show his support for Hispanics who are trying to do something. I think he'd do it. So would you?
Yeah, I would definitely ask him. I'll tell him.
All right, y'all heard it.
President Trump, we got to get in the den here with Pastor Garza.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that, Mr. Eric Flores. Thank you for joining me in the den.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. And,
absolutely.
You know, Pastor, I think these conversations are what really, you know, spark that motivation to get involved, you know, to really understand who the person is. And I tell folks, look, the best voter is an informed and educated voter. Who's the person you're voting for?
Yeah. You have to hear from the people. You have to hear from people who you agree with, don't agree with. If you're not willing to talk, then you really shouldn't be speaking because, you know, I had even a conversation last night at the debate afterwards with somebody that was where I had to tell him, look, you didn't ask me. She was like, well, I didn't know that, but because you didn't ask. You took it upon yourself to go and say things that were not true. So, well, was I supposed to come out? Yes, because they were criticizing me about somebody that I had on the show. And I said, but that's how you hear people out. You give them an opportunity to talk. How do I know something? And that's when that came up. And I said, but you didn't ask. That's why you didn't know.
what do they say? Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah, and I believe that conversations, as we saw with Charlie Kirk, conversations are absolutely necessary and crucial. Somebody that's not willing to talk, it's usually because they have nothing to say. So I welcome all guests from all sides. I welcome them into the den, and again, I'm gonna be looking at the race. We have some great candidates up there, so it's
to all my Republican listeners, right? Hopefully statewide, nationwide, maybe even hope some folks are listening in internationally. But us as a Republican Party, we have to be just like what you said, Pastor. Have those conversations and educate. Don't turn that switch off and stop listening or don't want to talk to somebody because they may not be Christian or they may not be a Republican. Well, educate them.
mm-hmm.
Sit with them and say, hey, this is why I'm on this side.
Yeah.
This is why I follow Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Because if you accept him, you will go to heaven.
Yeah. Right. Long conversations have a way of revealing what is not going to be said in a campaign spiel. This is who I am. And, you got your written thing. Long conversations like this about anything and everything reveals the person. And that's why I really enjoy having you guys on the podcast, because you get to hear a little bit about what's behind the campaigning and what's behind the candidate. Like, who are they as a person? So I pray and I believe that people will be able to take a look and see who you are.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pastor.
Again, thank you for joining me in the den.
No, thank you for having me in the den.
Right.
Truly enjoyed the conversation. And, I look forward to being back here, hopefully with President Trump.
All
and, marching on to the general to beat Vicente.
All right. Well, you be blessed.
You as well. Thank you so much.